Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. I like the saying, oftentimes the cheapest way to pay for something is with money. I found it to be true in many situations. Well played, OP. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. You should have better worded your threat because I saw it as an opportunity. Some years ago, I was 25-year-old male and broke up with my 24-year-old female girlfriend. She had cheated on me after 7 years together, and where we lived, we had a 1-month notice to leave our apartment. In order not to pay 2 rents, I had to wait until the end of the notice before moving out. In the end, she kept the apartment with a new roommate, but we still had to pass the landlord's inspection to get our security deposit back. I moved out something like 5 days before the inspection date, and living with someone you dump for almost a month can be hard. She was either trying to convince me to stay with her, either trying to make my life miserable because I dumped her. As you can guess, when I moved out, I wasn't thrilled to know that I had to come back some days later to refill holes, repair some stuff, and clean the apartment with her before the inspection. But hey, I'll do it. Just so before leaving, sitting in my car about to start the engine, she tells me, "You'd better really help me for the cleanup. You either clean really good or I keep the security deposit." Maybe a bit of context was lost in translation because this discussion wasn't in English. The way she worded it could mean either a threat or a choice. The tone and context sure enough clarified that it wasn't supposed to be a choice. Some things to know. I sure don't love doing chores, but cleaning isn't an issue for me. For her, most of it isn't either, but in the 7 years we were together, she never cleaned the toilets or the bathtub drain, siphon, because it disgusted her. So I did it, and she did other stuff to compensate. Money-wise, I was a working IT engineer, and she was a student, so the security deposit, 300 to 400 euros each, may be huge for her, but I didn't care that much. So I simply replied, "Okay." She looked at me a bit confused, not understanding my answer. I said, "Okay, keep the deposit and do it all by yourself." I didn't wait for an answer, drove off, and when I arrived, I messaged the landlord, with my ex in CC, telling them to send the full deposit to my ex and none to me, and I never set foot in this apartment again. Edit. Some info since people asked and not everyone will check the comments. She kept the apartment, but since my name was on the contract, the landlord had to refund the security deposit and have a new one in order to make a new contract. Legal reasons, I guess. Where I live, usually the landlords always find ways to keep at least part of the security deposit. This landlord was the exception and the first honest landlord I encountered and refunded her the whole amount. I didn't trash the place before leaving or anything else because I didn't want to do a petty revenge or something like that. My goal was to get out and avoid seeing her again as much as I could, not take revenge. This was more than 5 years ago, and I had time to move on since, don't worry for me. Nice one. It's just like parents, especially happens with those with low empathy who mess up by mistaking what they think is a punishment as being a punishment from your view too, when instead you view it as an option. And our second story. Do you want a job? This happened several years ago while I was shopping where they wear blue shirts and have a nerd platoon. I'm in the computer accessory section looking for a DVD RW to replace a faulty one and some extra RAM for a kick. I am, however, not dressed in any way like the indentured servants scurrying around the floor. Black leather bomber jacket, black t-shirt, black jeans, black steel-toed boots, and look like I just got off a motorcycle, which I had. In fact, a rather imposing figure if met in a dark alley. I shop here often and know several employees and a few managers. While reading the back of some box, I notice a little old lady, 90-ish years old, 630 in dog years, and maybe 80 pounds, 35 kilograms, soaking wet, glancing between blank CDs and DVDs. Back and forth through the section, she would pick up a container, carefully looked at it, put it back, and grab the next for careful inspection. I didn't really pay much attention until I hear her sigh. Not the typical Karen, get your keister over here and help me, but more the final resignation of utter defeat. Okay, that got my attention. I ask if I can help. She quickly gives me the once over and pause for a moment. For a second, I thought she was going to call security, then nearly pleaded with me to find what her granddaughter wanted for her birthday. A PC with a DVD-R. I briefly explained that what she's been looking at are blank disks and not PCs. A PC is a full computer. Her blank stare spoke volumes. She told me she'd waved down a few blue shirts, but no one responded. I said, "That's no problem. What does he want? Let's go see if we can find something for her together." I hold out my arm for her to take, and we round the corner to the laptops and PCs. I get an idea of what grandchild wants. A laptop is what I gathered, and poke through the models on display. We pick out one and pull the little slip she'll need when she goes to the nerd desk to pick it up. I walk her to the counter. She thanks me for being so polite and kind, to which I blame my mother for the upbringing. I go back to shopping for the drive and RAM I need, find them, and head over to checkout. I pay and walk to the door. The burly security guy stops me, like everyone else, and looks in my bag and checks my receipt. Just as we're getting done, I get a tap on the shoulder, and it's the store manager I'm familiar with and the little old lady. He recognizes me and asks if little old lady's story is correct. I ask for clarification, not wanting to jump headfirst into a potential Shark Tank. He relays how I helped her when no one else would. I guiltily nod my head. He tells me this is his mother and the PC is for his daughter. She wanted to surprise both son and granddaughter, so she didn't seek her son out for help. Apparently not considering an employee discount either. Well, anyways, he just wanted to thank me for taking the time with his mother. No problem, I said, again blaming my mother for teaching manners. He then asked if I would like a job there. While growing up, we've all hoped some corporate bigwig would single us out and offer us some big shot executive position that doesn't need a lot of input yet pays a boatload. This was not what he was offering, so I politely declined. Get to help someone spoiling their granddaughter? Count me in. Oh, it may not have been a Karen story, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. Actually, maybe even more, because it was a wholesome read, and no one needed to get revenge in the end. And our next story. You make pool not fun, so you aren't playing anymore. I play pool pretty frequently because it's a fun social activity in a bar, most of the time. This is a love the game, hate the player story. The dive bar where I learned to play is pretty busy at night, but evenings can be dead. Last week, I was there around supper time, and the only other customer there was an arrogant, self-righteous, far right-winger jerk. I'll call him Mark. I didn't like the guy, but I was too easygoing to tell him to F off, so I ended up playing pool with him. There was nothing else to do. It's clear from the start that Mark thinks he's better than he is, doesn't know proper strategy, considers his lucky shots skillful, taunts me for missing shots, but doesn't notice that I'm taking tough shots to keep things interesting. I won 6 of 7 games we played, and he thinks we're about even in skill. By now, it's been over an hour, and the bar's getting busier. There's a lineup of people wanting to play pool, so Mark suggests playing teams. At this point, I'm annoyed, but keeping my cool and agree to play. The team we played came pretty close to winning fairly, but left me with an easy shot on my last ball. If I wanted, I could win the game and the table. This is when Mark decides that I need coaching on where to shoot. He starts pointing out the shot for me, leaning over the table and telling me how easy it is. Out of frustration, I just shot the 8-ball down and lost the game on purpose. Very smoothly dropped the cue stick and walked out while he called after me. Losing has never been so satisfying, and by that point I was just done with everyone and everything. He would have had to join the back of the lineup if he wanted to play again, and it had grown enough to take almost an hour. Mainly, I just hope he realizes what a jerk he was being. And our next story. Neighbors hit parked car in my driveway twice. So my wife and I own a house right next to a duplex rental property. Our driveway butts up against the neighbor's driveway, and there's no curb between them. These driveways are both what I would call single-lane driveways, as in cars can only park single file in either driveway. Well, since there are 2 neighbors in this duplex, each with their own car, sometimes the kid who parks furthest in uses our driveway to get out of his driveway when he's parked in, instead of asking the other neighbor to move their car. As a general rule, I don't have a problem with this. My wife and I share a car, and there's plenty of space for him to use our driveway. The problem is when we have friends or family parked in our driveway, instead of asking his driveway mate to move their car where he's parked in, this kid tries to still use our driveway and cuts it close. So close that last week he actually hit my sister's van. thereby damaging 2 panels, one of which had just been replaced that week. He did the right thing and knocked on our door and gave my sister his information. Fine, I get it. You made a mistake. They happen. And you rectify it by giving us your insurance information. We can all move on with our lives. But get this, the kid actually had the gall to ask my sister to move her van after the information exchange took place. Oh, hell no. She did, however, comply with his request. That really got me boiling. Fast forward a week to yesterday, and this GD kid did it again, this time to my father-in-law. He cut it close, hit my father-in-law's car, and this time just left his name and phone number on his car. Needless to say, I'm disgruntled. You would think after hitting someone's car once, this would end. Why can't this kid just ask the neighbor who shares his driveway to move their car? This kid's insured under his parents, and he actually gave my sister his mom's phone number when the first incident happened. So my wife is planning on calling her and letting her know in a cordial but firm fashion that we do not appreciate this in any way and that she needs to let her son know this has to stop. We'll also be speaking with him in person, hopefully today. Again, we aren't going to scream at him, but we'll be firm and clear in letting him know he's no longer welcome to use our driveway under any circumstances. And our last story, The Great Patrick's Plan. Good evening, dear readers. Reading a story from Reddit, I remembered an incident that happened to my grandmother a couple of years ago, and today I would like to share it with you. By the time of this story, my grandmother had lived in the suburbs in her home for 40 years. She had friendly neighborhood ties and a quiet suburban neighborhood. One day, a neighbor on the right, who was the same age as my grandmother, passed away, and his house went to the grandson, who was a total degenerate. Let's call him Patrick. He was about 6 feet tall and weighed about 300 pounds. He drove an old Toyota pickup truck, always partying with a bunch of nasty-looking people doing drugs and alcohol in his house, or he'd get dropped off in the middle of the night by his friends, dead drunk, and dumped under the door of his house, where he'd stay asleep until morning. No one wants to carry a 300-pound stinking drunk to their house, but that's all the little things. One day, Patrick apparently had too little money left for alcohol and drugs, but he had a great plan. He decided to break into my grandmother's garage and steal my late grandfather's old bicycle. I don't know why we hadn't scrapped it yet, but it seemed like a real treasure to Patrick. It also seemed like a great idea for Patrick to sell this treasure on eBay. Apparently, Patrick thought old ladies don't use the internet, and it was the perfect plan. After a couple of days, my dad happened to find it there for 50 euros, so he decided to go over to Patrick's with his cop friend, just to scare Patrick. As dumb as Patrick was, he made an appointment to see him, not at his house, but in the parking lot of a small 24/7 store. When it was time for the meeting, Patrick drove his pickup truck in reverse to the store, but when he saw 2 men approaching, one of whom was in a police uniform, he suddenly pressed the gas pedal and backed into the storefront. Fortunately, no one inside was injured. Patrick ended up being charged with drunk driving, property damage, and theft. How fortunate that a police officer was there. I know the story makes no sense, and I wouldn't have believed it myself if my father and a friend hadn't brought it up all the time when they drank beer at my house, but it always makes me feel a little warmer when I think about it. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.